I'll just start with one thing that we have found kind of interesting is that mask mandates have become tangled up with these levy requests. And as we understand it, mask mandates are state mandated and actually not something that necessarily plays into schools that have to ask for money from voters. Can you kind of illuminate that? Because we've been seeing things like that on social media.
Yeah, I'd be glad to jump in, and that would be that, yes, OSPI, we take our orders from OSPI and they partner with the Department of Health. And then of course, our public health department here, we also come under their authority as well. And so yes, mask mandates have come from OSPI and we are required to follow the rules that we are given by them and then enforced. The Kittitas Public Health can be as strict, but they can choose to be stricter. And I would just say a shout out to the whole Kittitas Public Health. They've been amazing partners and they are very committed to keeping schools open. And mask wearing is definitely something that is a mandate that we are required to follow. As far as the money is concerned, the ESSER funds, sometimes I've heard the question, well, why does the district need more money? They just got all this federal money in ESSER funds. ESSER funds were given to us by the federal government to spend on expenditures like masks. But those are one-time funds. Once those funds are gone, they're gone. And 82% of our budget here in Ellensburg is staffing, right? Pay and benefits. And post McCleary, just to toss this in too, before the McCleary decision, the state used to give us extra funding for teachers that had more years of experience. So here in Ellensburg, over 50% of our teachers have 15 or more years of experience, and we used to get extra funding for that. No longer. After McCleary, our average salary for teachers right now is anywhere between 72 and 74,000. And we only get a flat rate right now from the state, which is at about 67,000. So we've had some added costs post McCleary, but the masks and all the protective equipment necessary that has been mandated to us from OSPI, most districts right now, I know Ellensburg is, and I'm sure Angela can speak for Kittitas, that's the funding that we're using currently to be able to supply masks and do all of the gloves where we need to, the gowns where we need to. Angela, would you add anything to that?
Well, the funding, the ESSER funding that you are talking about was timely and just to provide support to address those mandates and things that we have to follow. I think the Kittitas County school districts do an outstanding job in trying to keep our kids in school and meet the needs, the social emotional needs of our kids. And without this funding, the levy support by our community makes it really difficult as well. So we're doing the best we can and adjusting our schedules based on what the ever-changing mandates, they change daily. And our schools are connected to the health department where we get good information and we're doing what we need to do to keep our kids in school. And that's where they need to be. They need to be learning.
So Ms. Parker Vanderhook, can we hear from the Thorp School District on this issue?
So we had a lot of community meetings going into the summer, and yeah, lots and lots of concerns about masking and state mandates. So specifically like addressing our voters who might be watching this, that our levy money is our only local source of money, that this is the only money where our local voters, our school board really has a say in how it's spent. Budget that comes from the state, we play by the state's rules. And while I greatly appreciate everything Kittitas County Health and the state has done to keep us open, to keep our students safe, for our voters who are concerned about local input in their school district, this is the only money that is subject to that local input.
Yeah, thank you. Ms. Barrett, would you like to add to that? And also too, remember, we are a naive audience like OSPI.
Right.
Remember, we don't know your jargon. So if you could explain that to us as well.
Absolutely. So the OSPI is actually the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction. So he is
thank
kind
you.
of like, so we've got the governor up there in charge of the entire state, and then OSPI is in charge of all of the schools. And so the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, Chris Reichdahl is our superintendent, and he has been doing an amazing job throughout this incredible time. As a matter of fact, he called me personally the other day and just asked a couple questions about some things. And so I was able to share some information about the Upper Kittitas County. And I thought that that was really great to be able to do that, and that he was listening for that. The other thing that we have is the Department of Health, and Dr. Mark Larson and his team down there are absolutely doing an amazing job. And Dr. Larson took time out of his busy schedule and updated superintendents weekly at the start of the school year. And it was probably one of the most valuable opportunities that I had to find out what was happening throughout the community and throughout the, I mean, he just knows what's happening. So it's so fortunate to have him there. One of the things that we talked about as well, the other superintendents mentioned, were the ESSER funds. So those are the emergency school relief funds. And those were provided from the US government to fund some of the things. We used to and set up sanitizing processes for classrooms. I remember last year when I worked a little bit with the Cleellum School District, we used it also for sanitizing and for extra personnel to come on in and help support the regular staff as well. So some of those funds, as was mentioned, are this is the key fund that is flexible for spending, and we're required to follow all of the guidelines, including our school board recommendations as well. And so the school board has the ultimate say as to, where we're going to, how tight we can, tighten up the reins, so to speak, on many of the issues.
All right, so why have you, maybe we can get you to start the next answer this question. Has the pandemic affected how has the pandemic affected the levies? Would the levies be what they are regardless of the pandemic, or has that had some impact?
So I can just speak from my brief opportunity of being here in Easton this year. And I have seen that the levies continue to support the district where maybe the state has fallen down in a couple of areas. And so we've been able to use the levy funds to help supplant some of those issues that maybe we have slipped a bit. I know that it was calculated that our student enrollment was down a little bit more. And so some of the funding that came from the state was cut that way, but we were able to make up for it with some of our local funds and the local levies with that as well.
Okay, well, thank you. All right.
You bet.
So would that be the same kind of situation with the rest of the superintendents and the rest of the levies in the different school districts? Let's go to Superintendent Haber.
Yeah, I appreciate what Tim had to share. And so an example for us is that we know that mental health is really something that has come to the forefront with the pandemic, right? The students are feeling more isolated. People are wearing masks. It's harder to kind of connect. And so we were able to use ESSER funds to hire mental health specialists, 2 mental health specialists, as well as 2 family liaisons. There is no funding that really comes from the state for mental health or like family liaisons. And what we're looking at is with levy money, especially if the levy was renewed, our intent would be to see how we could use those funds in conjunction with our general funds to keep their mental health therapists and our family liaisons on board, because we know social emotional support is so important. But that is not part of the funding, the current funding model from the state.
Okay. Ms. Parker Vanderhook, could you respond?
I thought earlier Superintendent Haber said something really important about the OSPI formulas for how you need to have, I think she said 5,000 students to qualify for funding for a school nurse. And so for smaller school districts, those kind of formulas really, really impact us, where like just some of the overhead costs we have just existing as a district does not equate to the formula because we do have far fewer students. So I thought that was a really important point to make, especially for small school districts. But for the effects of COVID on our levies, and just again, trying to remember that our voters are our audience here, is, you know, so much has been said about mental health and our student experience. And I think that we, as a culture, have kind of realized just the scope of the expectations that we're putting on our schools. So in order to meet all the massive needs, social, emotional, academic, physical, all these, you know, important needs that our students have, that's our local levy money is so important, because without that local levy money, guys, we can't do it. So please vote yes.
Ms. Von Essen, let's hear from you. What have you got to say?
I love their passion. I agree. You know, Ginger, Tim, and Beth did an outstanding job explaining the needs, and I don't have anything else to add. But we do, other than we just have the similar needs in our district.
Okay, so one of the questions that's coming in, and we'll just start with you, Superintendent Von Essen, since you were last up. Is the school district experiencing a high staff turnover or burnout?
I'm noticing that school districts are in our educational service district area, which is located in Yakima. They service approximately 25 school districts in Eastern Washington and lower Eastern Washington. We're experiencing some shortages in staff or having enough substitutes to support our educational programs. That's why it's important to be able to utilize our levy funding for smaller class sizes to adjust and also to retain our good teachers. It's you know, providing them the professional development, the social emotional support. Our students and staff are experiencing some difficult times, and so the funding does help support for us to adjust for, you know, the lack of staff substitutes at this time, as well as just burnout, and the pandemic has been somewhat of a hardship on providing enough substitutes to be able to have, you know, school every day. But we've been able to be very proactive in keeping school open. So the levy funds does impact how we can best support our staff and retain them. And that is so important, crucial for our everyday activities.
Thank you. Mr. Barrett, what has been going on in your district with regard to turnover or burnout?
You know, we've the only turnover that we've had are some teachers that have been here for an incredibly long time. I believe 30 and 32 or 40 and 32 years were the retirees that we had this past year. And so what I can truly say is that our teachers, yes, they're tired of the pandemic. They want it to go away. But yet, on the other hand, they understand that there's one way for that to happen, and that's to keep the masks on and to you know, they're incredibly excited to be back full time and not have to worry about the A/B schedules. I mean, we had a technology levy a couple of years ago, and that was very fortunate because we were very well endowed with Chromebooks and other technology materials to be able to have our students experience what they had the past year and a half, almost 2 years. And so, but on the other hand, you know, our teachers are so incredibly dedicated to the entire process. They want to be here, and our levy funds have provided support for them for the added materials that they need to make things happen.
Great, thank you. Ms. Parker Vanderhook, tell us about what's going on in your district.
Well, I got a lot of thoughts on teacher burnout.
Well, you are a teacher, you are a classroom. I'm sure the superintendents do as well, but you actually are in the
yeah,
the front line.
I'm sure that the superintendents definitely have like a much wider view than I do. Whereas, I know from a small corner of the world, my own classroom and my own conversations with colleagues. Yeah, we're tired. The past couple years have been brutal. And then, this year, I cannot say enough that this year has been infinitely better than last year. And I certainly don't speak for all teachers, but I will wear a mask at work forever, so long as I never have to teach hybrid again. Forever. Is this year, it's, like they say in college football, this has been a rebuilding year. Like, we've got our kids back. We've got them back 5 days a week, but there's just a lot of rebuilding what was lost, math and reading skills, but also social skills. I know we've all seen a big difference in attention span, and just kind of teaching these kids like how to be students again, because it's been so long, and they forgot how to be students again. Maybe I've also a little bit forgotten how to be an in-person teacher again. And yeah, like teacher burnouts, it is huge, because more than ever this year, we have to wonder, gosh, can I take that sick day? Can I take that personal day? Are there the subs to cover? If I meet my own needs, am I letting down my team? And just that takes a really big emotional toll. And then so to, bring it back for our whole reason of being here today, just that even though the levies are, 10-15% of our budget, that's the stuff that makes a difference. Like, that's what lets, that makes the difference. It keeps the class sizes down. It helps us pay for extra teachers and paras, and it lightens everybody's load enough. And that money for just teacher burnout and feelings, that money, it makes a difference. We really feel it.
Good. Thank you. Ms. Haber, from your perspective.
I would just echo what my colleagues have said. I would also say that what I'm hearing, I just met with principals this morning, is just the number of student absences right now has really been weighing heavily on teachers, on principals, superintendents. And it increases the workload, I think, for teachers when you have more and more students that are absent, because as everyone said, like our teacher team here is absolutely amazing, and they care so much about our kids and they're wanting to catch them up. But it's a heavy load when there's more and more students that are absent. And so what we know for students and engaging them is the importance of extracurricular activities, right? Our sports and the clubs. And sometimes if students are missing, it's one thing to be missing because they're sick or they have COVID. But if they're missing school because they're feeling disconnected, that's again, where because levies fully fund athletics and all of those extracurricular activities, that is really, really motivational and essential for many of our students, if not all, to feel that sense of connection with our school. And so we have felt more than ever, we just want to stay strong with our extracurricular activities, our athletics, because we know how important it is to keep students engaged in their learning and keeping them coming to school if they're not sick, so that we, can, whatever we can do to lessen that attendance issue that can be so trying and exhausting, I think, for teachers and all of us.
Okay. All right, so we're coming to the end. We'll start with you, Superintendent Haber. Are there any last thoughts or things you'd like to bring up to address that maybe we've missed?
I would just say that if you think there are some assumptions on how schools are funded, we do get funding from the state, we do get funding from the federal government, and that percent from levies really are also an important part of our overall budget. And just want to thank folks for the opportunity to have us share more about it. I think the technology levy as well as the EPNO levy just go a long way to supporting our district and our teachers and most, and our students. Really does make a difference, as all my colleagues have said. So thank you again for this opportunity.
Miss Parker Vanderhook, could you tell us any last thoughts or things we might have missed or things you want to emphasize?
School levies are the greatest local investment we have in our school districts, and we've learned so much the past couple of years about how incredibly important our schools are to our communities. So this is one of the best, one of the most important ways for our communities to support our schools. And those levy dollars, that's the difference between a good school and a great school. And we all want great schools for our students. So by voting yes on our levies, like this is the best way to ensure that our students, that the people taking care of us in the future, our future leaders, that they have great schools and the schools that we want them to have.
Wonderful. All right. How about from you, Mr. Barrett?
I completely agree. The importance of the local levies and the funding is absolutely incredible. I think here's just a great example. A teacher came to me the other day and said, I want to use some virtual reality in my classroom so that if the kids are learning about the White House, they can actually go through and walk through the corridors of the White House. Or if they want to see a Civil War battlefield, they can go out there and see what the Civil War battlefields look like. And I think that that's really one of the critical things. That's not provided by the state. That's not provided by the Department of Education or the ESSER funds. That's provided by local funds, because that is something incredibly unique for the individual. And it's so heartening for me to be able to say yes to that. And even though monies are tight and some student enrollments are down and we're tightening the belt here and there, we still want to keep that innovation going. And I think that that's really one of the key things about the local funds is it allows the districts to be innovative and to do these things that are specific to them, whether it's to buy extra time for nursing support, to buy the after school tutoring time. For us, it's with a Hispanic liaison individual. Part of that time is there. I just think that it's incredible for our communities to continue to support our levies.
Thank you so much. Ms. Von Essen, the last word goes to you, ma'am.
Okay, so I just wanted to remind everybody that kids are our future and it's our best investment. The best investment our community can make and where they have a say, and we can carry that out. So I just encourage everybody to continue to support our schools in Kittitas County and support our kids. Thank you.
Okay, so I would like to thank Ginger Huber, Angela Von Essen, Tim Barrett, and Beth Parker Vanderhook for sharing their views, and of course, for all their efforts in educating today's children who are tomorrow's leaders. To get more information about this issue, we will direct you to the Kittitas League site where we have an online voters guide. We will also have a copy of this presentation as well as the PowerPoint links that our participants today shared with us. Anyway, remember to vote for the position that best represents your views. Every vote does count. Your vote matters. So join me by casting your ballot in the February 8th special election. Thank you and have a wonderful rest of the day.